Nobody talks about this, but what if being constantly hungry has nothing to do with food? You just ate an hour ago, a full meal. But you're back here, standing in front of the fridge, wondering why? This might explain something you felt your whole life and never had the words for. For some people, hunger is not a physical signal, it's an emotional one, and the difference changes everything. Psychologists call it non-homeostatic eating, eating driven not by your body's needs, but by your emotional state. And here's what the research shows. Most people who feel constantly hungry are not hungry at all. They are unsettled. Anxiety is one of the most common hidden drivers of constant hunger. When the mind is in low-level alarm, the body reaches for comfort. Food becomes a substitute for something the nervous system is looking for: safety, calm, control, distraction. Late-night eating is rarely about dinner. It's about something that happened during the day that never got resolved. You are not eating food. You are eating the feeling you cannot name. Stress eating is not a lack of willpower. It is a learned coping strategy. And it made sense. Once, when we were children, food was comfort. Food was reward. Food was love. Those associations don't just disappear when we grow up. The brain learns early. Food means safety. Food means being cared for. Food means everything is going to be okay. And sometimes it still works, and for about 30 seconds. Then the feeling comes back. Hungrier than before. Boredom hunger is one of the most misunderstood forms of eating. It is not hunger, it is a search for stimulation. When you find yourself standing in the kitchen not knowing what you want, that is almost never about food. That wandering in the kitchen at night, it's not your stomach calling, it's your nervous system looking for regulation. Psychologists have a term for this: emotional hunger. And it has a completely different signature from physical hunger. Physical hunger builds slowly. It can wait. It accepts almost any food. Emotional hunger comes on suddenly, craves something specific, and is never fully satisfied. Think about the last time you found yourself eating without being hungry. What were you actually feeling in that moment? Stress at work? A difficult conversation? A feeling of being unseen? Each of these alone can trigger hours of non-stop hunger afterward. After a stressful event, cortisol levels spike. And one of cortisol's primary effects is a strong drive to seek high-calorie, high-reward food. In therapy, people who struggle with constant hunger often discover they are not hungry at all. They are lonely, or numb, or afraid. And when someone finally names that for them, something in the room shifts. Because finally, the real hunger has a name. The first step to changing the pattern is the one most people skip: pausing before eating and asking, am I actually hungry right now? Journaling what you feel before you reach for food is one of the most effective tools researchers have found for breaking the emotional eating pattern. Sometimes what feels like hunger is dehydration. Sometimes it is boredom. Sometimes it is sadness wearing hunger's clothes. Sitting with the feeling instead of eating through it, even for 3 minutes, rewires the pattern at a neurological level. Physical movement interrupts the emotional hunger signal at the source. It gives the nervous system what it was actually looking for: release. Writing the question, what am I actually feeling right now, and answering it honestly, is one of the most powerful things you can do. Loneliness is one of the most powerful hunger triggers psychologists have identified. Human connection feeds something food never can. When people feel genuinely connected, seen, heard, understood, the compulsive urge to eat without hunger decreases significantly. Mindful eating, actually tasting your food, eating slowly without a screen in front of you, changes the entire experience of hunger. Research shows that people who eat without distraction consume significantly less, not because they restrain themselves, but because they actually feel satisfied. Therapy doesn't teach you to eat less. It teaches you to need food for fewer things. That is the difference. One of the most important discoveries people make is this: boredom can be satisfied by engagement, not by food. Learning to sit with discomfort without immediately filling it is the single most transformative skill for anyone who struggles with constant hunger. Morning movement, even just a 10-minute walk, resets cortisol levels, and dramatically reduces emotional hunger impulses for the hours ahead. When you give your emotions a container in the morning, a page, a walk, a moment of stillness, they stop looking for a container in the kitchen. It doesn't happen overnight. But slowly, the pattern that took years to build begins to loosen its grip. The question is never really, why am I always hungry? The question is, what am I always hungry for? For a lot of people, the answer is connection, rest, a sense of meaning, the feeling that they matter. Food is not the enemy. Food is not the solution. Food is just food. And when we finally see it that way, eating becomes simple again. There is a version of you that eats when you're hungry and stops when you're full and feels completely at peace with that. That version is not far away. Emotional hunger and physical hunger, learning to tell them apart, is one of the most quietly life-changing things you can ever do. Stillness without food, comfort without eating. This is not deprivation, this is freedom. A meal shared with someone you feel safe with nourishes differently. The research confirms what we already feel. Connection changes everything about how we eat. Naming the emotion that drives the hunger, writing it down, saying it out loud, reduces its power almost immediately. This is not philosophy, this is neuroscience. Rest that is not filled with food, with screens, with noise, is one of the deepest forms of nourishment there is. One breath before you eat, one honest question, am I hungry or am I feeling something? Changes the entire neurological chain. Finding what genuinely nourishes you beyond food is not a wellness trend. It is the fundamental work of emotional maturity. You are not broken for eating when you're not hungry. You are human. You learn to cope. And you can learn something new. Recovery from emotional eating is not about discipline. It is about understanding. And understanding begins with curiosity, not judgment. What do you actually need right now? Not what do you want to eat? What do you need? Rest? Connection? To be heard? To feel safe? Sleep deprivation increases hunger hormones by up to 24%. When you sleep well, everything, including your appetite, comes back into balance. The body knows how to regulate itself, it just needs the emotional static to quiet down enough for it to be heard. Exercise is one of the most powerful emotional hunger disruptors known to psychology, not because it burns calories, but because it processes feelings. Mindful snacking, choosing it consciously, eating it slowly, tasting it fully, is completely different from unconscious grazing. The same food, a completely different experience. Being truly heard by another person satisfies something in the brain that food never reaches. That is not a metaphor. That is biology. If you have spent your whole life feeling like you are never full, I want you to hear this clearly, you are not broken. You are just hungry for something that food was never going to give you. Understanding your hunger, the real one, is not the end of anything. It is where everything actually begins. Therapy doesn't teach you to eat less. It teaches you to need food for fewer things. That is the difference. This is what healing looks like. Not dramatic, not fast, not perfect, just a little more honest with yourself every single day. That moment of catching yourself, I'm not hungry, I'm anxious, is not a failure. It is the single most important skill you are building. Cooking for yourself, slowly with care, is an act of saying, I matter. My hunger is real, and I will meet it honestly. Look around you, at the coffee shop, the office, the subway, and know this. Most of the people eating right now are not hungry either. You are not alone in this. This is one of the most common and least understood struggles in the modern world. The next time you feel that pull, that restless hunger that doesn't feel quite right, I want you to try something. Pause. Put your hand on your chest and ask, what am I actually feeling right now? Just that. Just the pause. Just the question. That is how everything starts to change. You don't need more willpower. You need more self-awareness. And the fact that you are watching this means you already have it. Every time you pause before eating, every single time, you are rewriting a pattern that has been running on automatic for years. Sitting with yourself, without food, without your phone, without noise, is one of the bravest things you can do, and one of the most necessary. The hunger that food cannot satisfy, the hunger for meaning, for peace, for genuine connection, that hunger is worth listening to. It is telling you something important. A morning that starts with intention instead of automatic reaching, that small shift alone changes the entire architecture of the day. When you understand what you are truly hungry for, you stop chasing the feeling. You start meeting it. This is what genuine nourishment looks like. It does not come out of a refrigerator. It lives in moments exactly like this one. If this is you, if you have spent years feeling like you can never get full, please hear this. There is nothing wrong with you. You have simply been feeding the wrong hunger. You are not always hungry. You are always feeling. And that is a very different problem with a very different and far more meaningful solution. Rest, real rest, not earned rest, not deserved rest, just rest, because you are a living being, and living beings need to stop. And while you sleep, your hunger hormones reset, your cortisol quiets, your nervous system remembers what balance feels like. You started this video standing in front of a refrigerator wondering why. Now you know. And knowing, genuinely knowing, changes everything. Does this feel familiar? Have you spent years wondering why you can never quite feel full? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Take care of yourself. Not just your body, all of you. I'll see you in the next one.